Hello, this is Rachel from 7 and All, and today I'm going to have a really fun video planned for you, which is just answering your own questions. These are questions that you guys sent in to my community tab or on Instagram. I'm going to answer as many as I can, and some of these are related to videos I've done in the past, so just fair warning, I'm going to be linking to some videos where I give more of a full treatment to this question. So let's dive right in. First question, how to choose your core subjects when you know you don't have the time to complete a full school day? So there might be days, maybe you have doctor's appointments or just something else going on and you don't want to say, oh, we're doing no school today, but you also know you can't do a full school day. How I would choose which subjects need to get done is I would look at my student, look at my homeschool and think, which subject areas do we really need the most consistency with right now? Which subjects are more struggle areas versus which subjects are we more ahead in and we can very easily skip a day. So just for example, I have a student who's quite far ahead in math, more than one grade level ahead in math. So I know that we can very easily skip a day in math if we need to cut our day short. I'm not going to worry about that at all. However, maybe Spanish literacy is a subject that he's going to benefit a lot more from consistency on, an area where we're really trying to challenge and grow skills there. So I wouldn't pick math for this particular child, but I would pick, we're going to have our Spanish reading lesson, or we're going to have our Spanish spelling practice. We're going to do something with Spanish to keep working on and honing those skills. Maybe with a different child who finds math to be more of a struggle, you would actually choose the math. What is my perspective on combining close age siblings into one level versus having them in separate programs, especially with something like a Sonlight HBL or the Curious Kinder? And just for a very short answer, I think it's very doable to have siblings close in age in one Sonlight HBL or even in the Curious Kinder. That's definitely doable. I am going to give a more full and complete answer on the pros and cons of family style learning in a separate video. I am not the person who's going to say, oh, family style learning will solve all your problems. Coming from a big family myself, with a lot of different educational needs and wide age gaps, in many ways we didn't do a lot of family style learning because it wasn't the best thing for our education. It wasn't the best thing for each of us to progress necessarily. We did do some. We did do some combinations for Sonlight, and I think Bible was one area where we really were having our family Bible time every day. So I don't think that there is one correct answer of yes, combine siblings, or no, separate them out. So I'm going to be filming a video dedicated to that. Once it's out, I will link to it down below. I did have several variations of this same question about combining siblings, so I hope that you guys find that video helpful. Next question, when are you planning another trip to the States? Isn't that the question? I'm sure my family, my long distance family would be watching this video and wanting to know the same answer because we have not really given them a straight answer. If you're new to my channel, I am from the USA. My husband is from the USA. We both have quite a bit of extended family there. And we live in Southeast Asia. Our last trip back was in 2022. We are tentatively looking at 2025 summer. Because of my husband's job, the only time when we have enough time to travel to the US would be for his summer break, because it's so expensive and it's so much work to have that really long plane flight. It can only really happen during the summer. So if we don't go summer 2025, then it will be out a whole nother year. This is always a hard decision to make, especially with raising kids overseas, because we're balancing multiple things, right? We're balancing, yes, we want our kids to feel like they have connections to their passport country and to their extended family, to their grandparents and their cousins and their aunts and uncles and all the family in the US that loves them so much. But also, it's a very expensive place to travel to. It's very difficult to think about traveling to the US and you've got 5 people and 3 children that need car seats, and how are we all going to fit in a vehicle? And Thankfully, we do have a lot of family, so when we are going, we are staying in their nice cozy basements in Michigan or in the spare bedroom at my in-laws' house. So we have places to stay. Very thankful for that, and that's part of what makes it possible. But it's still not, it's not an easy trip, and it's a trip you have to save for. So yeah, I'll update you if you'll know if we end up going back in summer 2025 or not. It's on the table, because by then it will have been 3 years since the last time our kids were back, and in the life of a child, 3 years is a long time. So we will see. Next question. What coping strategies do you find most effective for children? Specifically, she's talking about a child who gets overwhelmed when she trips up or when she makes a mistake, and how to get her back on track from being overwhelmed by making mistakes. To me, this sounds like an issue with kind of perfectionist tendencies, and I have what I think is a very great video on tackling perfectionism in your homeschool. I will link to that video below on overcoming perfectionism, because I think that is something that we as parents really need to address and really need to bite in the bud, because perfectionism can be so crippling to the learning journey. We need to make sure that our kids are okay with making mistakes. Making mistakes and being able to just roll with it. Being told you got this wrong, or being told you can do this better, and not being overwhelmed, not crying, not throwing fits, not being too sad, overly sad about it. That is a crucial skill for them to be able to really progress in their education. So this is a culture we really need to foster in our homeschool, and this is a character issue that we really need to tackle with our kids. That no, we're not going to choose the path of overwhelm when we're criticized. We're not going to choose the path of overwhelm and drama and disaster when we're told, hey, you got this wrong, or hey, you can really improve your skills here. So yes, I have a video talking all about that and really challenging all of us as homeschool parents to tackle this and address this in our homeschools. Next question. When do you push through a struggle versus when you shelve it and give it more time? Knowing how to handle specific struggles is really something that I think comes with time and experience as a teacher, with just becoming more skillful as a teacher and really getting to know your student. I will say I don't really feel like I lean towards the shelving it strategy with just about any struggle. We never really put it away on a shelf, but we will realize it's going to take more time, it's going to take more practice. I'm going to be patient in this process. So with experience, you can get a feel for when a struggle, a particular struggle with a child is more just developmental and they're just going to need time and practice and exposure to this idea before it clicks, versus when it's something else going on. Because kids are kids and they are immature, and sometimes they are purposely acting like they don't understand something, or purposely trying to do lower quality work just to see if they can get away with it, because hey, they're kids and they're gonna experiment. So the way I will handle different struggles definitely is different. So I'm gonna give you an example. If one of my child completes a worksheet and it is just sloppy and messy and poorly done, I am not going to think, he really just needs more time to work on his fine motor skills or work on his handwriting and his letter formation, so we need to dial it back and work on those foundational skills. No, I know my student. He has zero problems with fine motor skills. He has zero problems with handwriting or letter formation. All of that he can do excellently. However, he's a child. He is immature. Once in a while, he might try and see, hey, can I get away with just doing rushed, sloppy work? Then it's my job as a teacher to realize, yes, this is maybe a developmental struggle, but it's not in the sense of learning handwriting skills. It is in the sense of, am I going to do a good job or not? Am I going to do my best work or not? And so we are going to address the character development there, not the handwriting development, because I can clearly, I know what my child can do. I know he can do the handwriting, and I know that this is more of a character issue. And that's when we're going to do, we're going to erase the page and we're going to do it over again. And my children do tend to learn pretty quickly that it is better and faster and easier to just do your work correctly and neatly the first time than to attempt doing it poorly and then have to do it all over again. So that's an example of something where I'm assessing this is more of a character issue, this is more of a maturity issue, and it's not a learning issue. Versus with another child, I might have a lesson in a math book and I'm supposed to be teaching pairs that make 10, and they are supposed to be memorizing the pairs that make 10. Okay, 7 and 3, 6 and 4, 5 and 5. And I might be able to tell in this lesson, like, yeah, this child is not really clicking with him right now. He's not mastering it. And that I can see is much more of an academic thing. That's just something he's going to need to sit with. It doesn't mean I'm going to shelve it and put it away and we're not going to talk about pairs that make 10. No, by no means. But it does mean that I'm going to have in mind, okay, this isn't something he's mastered yet. This is going to be something that we'll need to come back to, gradually build familiarity. Build this idea that, hey, pairs that make 10 is something worth knowing. It's something we can know. It's something we're going to get more familiar and confident with through practice. Next question, have you ever used BJU? Thoughts on that? I've never used BJU. The only thoughts I have is it seems to be somewhat similar to Abeka. I've heard that their writing instruction is better than Abeka's writing instruction. I did use quite a bit of Abeka growing up, but no, I don't really know much about BJU. Next question, how important is kindergarten and elementary science and history? Now, for many, many people, you will hear, don't worry about doing science in early elementary grades, kindergarten, don't worry about doing history. I'm not really going to say that. History and science are a bit different to me. History, I don't teach history in kindergarten. I did wait with my oldest to start in first grade, and I think I'll do the same thing with my second child as well. I do think history is a little bit more abstract for kids, and being a little bit older does help with being able to engage with the names and the dates and the time spans of history and just how different life looked. That is a little bit harder, and I do think being a little older helps kids developmentally to get that. So waiting till first or second grade, I think is very appropriate for history. Science, on the other hand, I've heard so many people say like, oh, you don't really need to do science in elementary, but to me, I'm like, I don't even care. Do you need to or not? I'm like, why wouldn't you? It's so fun because science, especially early year science, is so much more concrete and it's so connected to the life our kids live. They're running in the park and they're crashing into trees, or maybe that's only my kids. So we can learn about trees. Trees are a part of their life. They're playing with leaves. Leaves are a part of their life. They're seeing animals and finding animals on the beach. All this nature science that we do in the early years is very much a part of their life. And I think early elementary science does a great job of building the vocabulary our kids need in understanding and exploring the world and building some great thinking skills and observational skills about the world around them, wondering, how does this work? When we're planting a garden, hey, how does this work? What are the words that I can use? What are the features that make something alive versus not alive? What makes something a mammal versus not a mammal? Like all those distinguishing details with how we classify different things, I think builds the foundation of logic and critical thinking skills. So if you can't tell, I am a very big fan of teaching science from a very early age. I just think it's a lot of fun. I was even doing an ocean science course in pre-K when my oldest was in pre-K, and we had a blast. So to me, science is too fun in the early years to skip it. I do and history can definitely be fun as well, but I do think for history, I can understand waiting a little bit longer, waiting more for some of the abstract thinking skills, just because that can be a little bit harder. It's less observable than nature science. So we've done a lot of science. This first grade year is our first year starting history, and we're enjoying that quite a bit. But I am glad that I waited past kindergarten to start history with my oldest. And I very intentionally did not include history in my kindergarten curriculum. All the themes in the Curious Kinder are very much nature science or biome. Next, resources you use to practice your Spanish. Now here's where I should probably have better answers, like some cool podcasts that I listen to while I do my housework. I don't listen to any podcasts while I do my housework. I don't actually know how people do that because I have tiny children and I feel like I always need to be listening to them while I'm doing housework and keeping my ear out for the needs of my kids. I don't listen to stuff. I took 2 years of Spanish in college. Once I got engaged to my husband was when I started studying Spanish. So I have that foundation of academic Spanish study that gave me all my grammatical foundation. I didn't really start regularly trying to speak it until after my oldest was born. So I would say by far my greatest growth in Spanish in recent years has just come through disciplining myself to use what I know with my kids, through asking my husband how to say stuff, through listening to what he says to our children and kind of learning parenting Spanish from that and just copying, mimicking what he says. And also through reading kids' books to my kids. Kids' books are much more accessible, yet they also include a lot of vocabulary that has expanded my own vocabulary. Something I would like to do would be to read more chapter books in Spanish. And I have done that with some kids books, but that are just chapter books and just text, and that has grown my comprehension. I did recently bring home a young reader's version of Don Quixote, and I opened it, and the first 2 pages I'm like, nope. I was feeling pretty good about my Spanish until I opened that book, and it's like the amount of words that I just did not know were very, very humbling, especially because this was not the original Don Quixote. This was a young reader's edition. However, I do not think it was not a very simple young reader's edition. It was still challenging. I showed it to my husband and he was like, yeah, this is pretty high up, pretty high level reading. And I think I could have done it if I was in a stage of life where I could sit down with my phone, be looking up words on Google Translate, be taking down notes in a notebook, really working on expanding vocabulary. But the kind of book I need right now is a book I can just read in one hand while I'm glancing at my baby every 2 minutes to make sure he's not putting something in his mouth. So I'm not really in a stage of life where I can do that more intense study where I'm really, really trying to expand vocabulary. But I do suggest that if you are in a stage like that, reading books in Spanish can be a really good activity, as well as disciplining yourself to just use what you know, use what you know, use what you know. Next, what are your thoughts on teaching a child to read early versus delaying? If you've been watching my channel long, you probably know something about what I think, and I actually have a video on this specific topic, teaching early versus delaying. I'm going to link to that video because I'll be able to go much more in depth on it in that longer video. But in general, I'll just give you a little tidbit of the way I think. I think teaching kids to read really starts with what I'm doing with my 9-month-old right now, when I'm singing with him, when I'm reading him little board books and pointing to the pictures and all of this verbal development. I think learning how to read starts when kids are babies, and you just gradually progress through each level, from what they can't do now, from what they can't do to what they can do, from what they can't do to what they can do, and you just gradually work at it. And then when you start seeing, okay, my child does know the letters, my child is making the connection that this letter makes this sound, okay, my child is now able to blend 2 sounds, they're now able to blend 3 sounds, you just gradually move from that. I've known so many people that are very much like, no, don't start teaching reading until after age 6, and I just can't get on board with that. I don't think that there's even really one moment that you can identify as, oh, I started teaching reading now. At least not with my own philosophy of teaching reading, that it's all connected, and it's all connected. Learning to recognize shapes connects with teaching reading. Learning animals and what sounds animals make, that's connected to teaching reading. So to me, it's all connected, so I don't see that we start teaching reading at a particular age. Like, yes, there is going to be a particular time when you decide, oh, my child is ready to pick up AAR and start blending those letters together and putting them together. But that will be much more based on their readiness, what they do know and what they don't know, versus a particular age or grade. But you can hear all of my thoughts on that topic in the video I'll link below. Next, it was requested to have updates on my sisters and their homeschool journey. So many of you know I come from a large homeschooling family. Most of us have grown and flown the nest. I currently have 3 younger sisters that live at home with my parents. One has very recently returned home. She is the illustrator who creates most of the illustrations for the curriculum that we produce for Where'd You Learn That on my homeschool website. She returned home after finishing her bachelor's degree, which was a degree in art education, and she is getting ready, gearing up to start a master's degree. So she's been accepted to the program. She's still currently working through paperwork and applications and all of that, but she is pursuing her dream of becoming an illustrator, learning more about art and art education, and she's going to go for earning a master's degree in fine arts while working and creating her own art and her own illustrations. So I give her many jobs to do and tend to keep her rather busy with projects. I'm actually currently teaching her quite a bit about curriculum development right now, in addition to art, because I have given her the very big project of creating an art curriculum and that is themed to ancient history, and I think it's coming together, fantastically. She is bringing so much expertise in her specific art field to this curriculum, and then I'm coming in and bringing the curriculum development skills that I have. So I'm very excited about it. That's what she's doing. So we love having her back, and I'm keeping her rather busy, and it's just so cool to see how her skills have progressed and how she is really pursuing her passion and her talent and continuing to hone that talent and grow in her skills. She's so eager to learn, so good at learning and progressing, and never being too content with what she already knows, but always pursuing growth. So that's what she is doing, finished with her bachelor's, gearing up to start a master's program. Then my other sister, who's living at home, is basically finished with all high school coursework. She's still doing a little bit of honing her skills in like calculus and physics. She is in a season of applying for colleges and applying for scholarships and seeing what that future looks like. Right now, she's thinking of probably a physics degree or physics education degree. Trying to get qualified to be a physics teacher, like a high school physics teacher, is the idea right now. She really loves math and science and is particularly interested in physics. So she's still at home for right now, but we foresee that she'll probably be heading off to college for the next school year. And then I also have a teenage sister who is still in middle school and just progressing in her middle school schoolwork. Next question, what history do you plan to use after G+C 1? So I'm currently using Gentle and Classical Sequence 1 with my first grader, and that is a very good question of what am I doing after that? Because it might seem obvious to use Gentle and Classical Sequence 2, although at this point, Gentle and Classical Sequence 2 does not exist. Probably going to be about 2/3 done with Gentle and Classical Sequence 1 sometime before Christmas. So I'm foreseeing that we are going to need history before Sequence 2 even exists, or before I would be able to get the books for Sequence 2. Also, Sonlight would be another option I would consider. However, looking at the Sonlight book lists and just thinking about what books I have read my son and what books my mom has read my son, I think we will have read a significant number of the book lists on like Sonlight A and B. We're actually probably heading in what may be a surprising direction. You can let me know what you think about this idea. But me and my mom and my sister have been very hard at work behind the scenes on developing an elementary ancient history curriculum that is literature-based and that is taking our style and approach and hopefully creating an incredible and amazing literature-based ancient history program that incorporates a lot of picture books. One of the things my mom has been saying is, if this is not a wow book, let's not schedule it in our curriculum, and let's keep looking until we find a wow book. Another big priority in developing this curriculum is making it truly a world history, ancient history curriculum, because I was tired of so many options that are ancient history, but it's basically Mesopotamia, Egypt, Greeks, and Romans, which those are very important. However, they were not the only ancient history there is. There's a lot going on in the whole rest of the world as well. So that is a big priority to me. in developing this curriculum is truly making it a world ancient history curriculum. So I feel like we still have a really long ways to go on this project, which is one of the reasons I have not talked about it much. I am hoping I can really pull it together to a point where I am happy with it and I am willing to offer it to you guys, but I've got a ways to go. So hopefully in the wee hours, in the 4:30 in the morning, between 4:30 and 5, if my baby doesn't wake up, I can be getting this done. I am very excited about it, and hopefully what I'm currently thinking is that that is going to be what we're going to do for 2nd grade for the literature, Bible, and history, geography for my oldest. And hopefully it's going to be an option that is going to be available to you guys as well, for those of you who are interested and have the same kind of values and desires for a history curriculum that I was. This was a really interesting question. Thoughts on the concept of a Grecian urn in education? Now, I think that's a very interesting concept. I first read the very famous blog post that brought up the Grecian urn in education years ago. I can link to that blog post down below if you've never read it. It was very famous, kind of a viral blog post for a while there. And the big question asked in that post about any type of educational activity is it an activity that consumes far more of a student's time than is reasonable in relation to its academic impact? Basically, is this just a time filler activity, or are our kids actually learning what they need to be learning from this activity, and bringing that question to our lesson planning? And I definitely think that that is a question that we should be asking as we're creating our curriculum plans and as we're creating our lesson plans in homeschool. Is this activity actually worth the investment of time and energy, or not so much? Is it just something that's going to look cool on Instagram? We need to be honest with ourselves about what the realistic learning outcomes are going to be. However, I will say that as homeschoolers, I do think we have a little bit more freedom for some of the just fun or excessive activities, just because we have a lot more time. When you are teaching in a classroom setting and you have 3 days to teach about Grecian civilization, yeah, spending 2 of them working on a Grecian urn is probably going to be a waste, because you've got so much to teach in a very limited amount of time. Homeschool gives us back so much more time with our kids and with our students, that I think sometimes we do have more time to waste, in a sense, on those experiential things that are really more about bonding, more about the creativity, more about the memories, versus really strictly education. So that's that's a short summary of my thoughts on that topic. And the final question that I'm going to tackle in this video is, how do you prioritize your kids? And this viewer has a kindergartner and a 3.5-year-old, and she finds she spends most of her time geared toward her kindergartner and wishes she had more time to spend with her preschooler. And I feel like this is the most relatable and probably the quintessential problem of parenting, is finding that balance of giving each child the attention that they need developmentally at that stage in their life. And it can be tough, because you might have a kindergartner who's in the learning to read stage, and you got to focus on that. That's very important. You know, we're setting the foundation for all future academics. And you might also have a baby, and it's very important for your eyes to be on them, because every time you take your eyes off them, they're putting a bug in their mouth. Like, every time. They are not that delicious. So you can have some kids who need you a lot more, and you might have a preschooler who, hey, you know, they're not putting choking hazards or bugs in their mouth anymore. And they're also not yet ready for more academics. They're not learning to add and subtract and to read yet. So maybe they don't need as much time with mom right now, but you still want to have that time with them. You want to have that preschool fun with them. And so it's not always going to be fair. Different children are going to need more from you at different times within their life. They're going to have different seasons and different ages where they just need more, or they don't need you as much. So I wouldn't focus on fairness, but I would focus on, what do you want and what do they need? You know, write that down, figure out what your priorities are, and maybe it's okay. You know, with my 3-year-old, I want to read to them every day, and maybe I want to do one learning activity with them daily, or 3 times a week, or whatever. Like, figure out what would feel good to you, what would feel good consistently to you to have that quality time, to have that quality learning time, and write it down and then figure out what schedule or what tool is going to help me do this. When in my day? Okay, maybe it's when my baby's taking a nap. I'm not going to jump right into housework. I'm first going to do some story time, then I'll do the housework. Find the part in your routine or find the tool that's going to make it easy to be able to do that consistently. And once you start doing it consistently and once it becomes a habit, it will typically get easier over time. So I do want to encourage you, it can be difficult for sure with multiple kids, but take the time to think about what will it take to make consistent quality learning time happen, and then start doing that thing. Because I do think preschool is such a precious time. It is something I'm passionate about, and it's a time that I don't want to miss, even in the middle of busy motherhood with a few small children. Finding 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes to just play with Play-Doh, to just do the finger painting. To me, it's very, very worthwhile. So I encourage you, it might not be easy, but find that time, and don't let the famous thing, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. You don't have to have a perfect scenario. Maybe baby doesn't even have to be sleeping. Maybe baby can be on your hip while you're coaching your 3-year-old. Here's your finger paints. And it might be a little bit extra messy, and it might be a little extra chaotic, but this is still the good old days, and it's still worth it to have that fun with them, have that preschool fun. All right, that is my Q&A. Thank you guys for your questions. You gave me a lot of fun and good questions to answer that got my gears turning. I'd love to hear from you down in the comments below on your thoughts on some of these questions, and I will be seeing you next time. Bye.